Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me all right? Yeah? Cool. I'm gonna
Howdy, can you hear me well? Cool, perfect. Um, I guess I'll just say my position. When it comes to the actual debate, the headline, people refusing to recognize the threat of climate change are in denial and or ignorant. Um, I would say that I do recognize the threat. Um, so I'm not really trying to argue that point. What I am arguing is the point that you made on Facebook, which was I'll debate anyone who refuses to accept man-made climate change is real. Because I do think that there's a difference between accepting whether or not climate change as we know it right now is man-made and whether or not climate change as a whole is a threat. So I just want to say that before we get into anything, I'm definitely trying to approach this from the perspective of climate change isn't man-made cause. So that's my personal opinion. So um, that's why I want to make sure that we keep I guess this debate.
cool. Yeah, so I'll just lay out my expectations here. Yeah, I'm arguing for man-made climate change that like our actions over the last few hundred years actually have our climate in some way, both in microclimates and also in larger global ways. That's going to be where I'll go. I could go right into it if you want, or yeah. So first of all, I think another important point to think about in this this idea, the topic we're talking about is why are people ignorant of it, right? Why don't people know about this, or are they just stupid, right? That's kind of the central part of this. So I think we're going to have a little bit of group psychology when we're going to kind of get a better sense of what we're arguing. So for one, I'm going to go way back to like the 70s, like 1974. There was these two professors, and they knew that there was like an issue with chlorofluorocarbons, right? CFCs. We had like hairspray and all that stuff, right? And people were like, no, whatever. And one guy, he said that the chairman of DuPont, he said, oh, that's a load of rubbish. All right. Well, 11 years later, they discovered that the ozone layer over in Antarctica, like 2 years after, they all just negotiated a Montreal agreement, right? So the Montreal Protocol set that up. And once that was set up, we all said, okay, yeah, you were right. You totally were right. And these guys didn't want us to know that you were right. And usually the reasoning behind that has a lot to do with profit, right? If a company is going to stand to lose because they can no longer, or maybe they have to make adjustments, it's going to be a pain in the ass, so they don't want to do it. You get the same issues when you're trying to make people do solar or make people go electric. There's costs, and people don't want to do costs. It doesn't matter whether you're left or right. Practically speaking, it's annoying. So I'm just going to say one quick thing about the evidence, and I'm going to hand it back to you. So, that NASA's been studying this. If you go to climate.nasa.gov and you look at evidence, you can see all the examples. And they show a huge spike. Like in the 50s, it was just like, what the? It was like crazy. We went, what is it, from, I took notes, from 180 parts per million in the late 18th century to 400. It's not unprecedented. It's ridiculous. There's been fluctuations if you look at charts, but for the most part, you've never seen anything like that. And that has to be due to the warming that's happening because of that intense amount. And essentially, our water is warming up. It's trying to hold on to heat. There's 95% of scientists today believe that human activities over the past 50 years have affected things. So I'll leave it with that. That's my position. And yeah, if you have any questions.
One second. Someone's at my door. Give me one moment. Sure. So, I think this conversation is going to be about the ozone layer. I thought it was going to be about, like, current climate change, which I guess, it's probably a bleed-in effect there or whatever. If I had the data in front of me, I'd like to look at it, but the the main thing I guess I would say is that the skepticism that I would give is that I don't really trust a lot of government statistics, to be honest. I know that sounds kind of just like I mean, it might sound like a cop out or whatever, but I mean, anytime the government has some type of like great big problem or whatever, they did it with like methane gas or whatever. They did it with marijuana or like reefer madness or whatever. Like, it turns out that they just want to have like regulations. So if I had the data in front of me, I mean, do you happen to have like a link or something that I can look at? But if not, I mean, I don't really know what to tell you. Like, the point of climate change is that it's been happening for a very long time, and you can't really determine that like there is an outcome from us. You know what I mean? Like, you can have a lot of data or whatever, but it depends on how people perceive it. You know what I mean? It depends on how they push it. You know what I mean? There's like that old adage of like there are people that lie, and then there's people that lie with statistics. You know what I mean? So you'd have to like literally prove, maybe with like a control group or something like that, which I guess you can't really do in this case. But you'd have to prove that like there's a direct causation. You see what I'm saying? So if you yeah, I'll pass the mic now. Like,
Yeah, a lot of questions there, so it's hard to hold that all in my head. But I think one of the premises that you're kind of going with is statistics are meaningless, which, we really can't have a proper debate if we start with that premise. So I think we should say statistics are important, but we should double check them. We should make sure they're peer reviewed. We should, make sure that we know the people. I mean, I am no scientist. I know people, and it's their job to go and make sure that the ground is not toxic. And that's their job. These are my friends. Like, these are regular people. They're scientists. They're not in the government. They're international. They're all over the place. So if we're going to go with statistics at all, yes, we got to be skeptical. We don't want to be manipulated with reefer madness and all that crazy stuff. But I think if we look at statistics, and I'll post a link on our little Facebook group or whatever, but it essentially shows, there's a little cooling warming. That's like a regular thing. And then suddenly, like in the last 150 years, it just goes, what? And it's because of industrialization. And it has a lot to do with our population growth. It has to do with cows. It has to do with all sorts of stuff. So that's a quick response to.
Sure. So I think you hit it more on the second go than the first go. I'm not saying that we can't look at statistics, but I am saying that like I'd rather look at the data by itself and then evaluate it before like I say someone. I don't want someone to tell me this is what the data shows. I'd rather them like show me the data, and then we can all make our own inferences or whatever. But the other thing is that probably just because we are existing on this earth, we have to be affecting the climate to some degree, right? But the point is that, is it really that much of a massive variable? See what I'm saying? That's what I want to know. Because the thing is that if it was a massive variable, then there should have been something to indicate that more than just like a spike. You know what I mean? Like at this point, at this point, again, you have to prove a causation. But if you can't prove a causation, then it has to be something like ridiculously obvious that like gravity exists. You know what I'm saying? So, but that isn't there. If you look at the whole spectrum, and I tried to find this on Google, but they didn't have the whole spectrum of like climate change over billions of years or whatever. It's like you said, it's been like that for a very long time, and so that's my point.
Thanks. I hear where you're going, man. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have been going on for a long time, but there's dramatic changes that haven't happened before. I mean, I have some notes. The acidity of the ocean is 30% higher than it was 100 years ago. The CO2 in the atmosphere has increased to 43% in the last 150 years. So beyond that, let's just say we got to check the statistics for it, but assuming that I'm on the right track here, that there is some kind of thing that we could stop doing or even actively do. Like if we had some scientists and was like, hey, scientists, can you turn CO2 into energy or something? Like we can science our way out of this, like the Martian, right? So if you believe in the idea that you can science your way out of it, you should believe in the idea of you could like not fuck up things and not use things and kind of listen to scientists who've done the studies, like, and read their research and become educated enough that you can actually do it. But also trust like 95% of these scientists are saying that global warming or climate change or whatever you want to call it is a real thing. And then there's at least, I think, 79% that are like, it's probably human. And let's say it isn't. Let's say, you know, there's a guy coming at me and he looks kind of scary. I think he has a knife, and he doesn't. He just walks by. It's fine. No big deal. But, you know, he could have had a knife. You know, maybe there's something I could have been more careful. I could have seen coming. So I'm getting psychological here because I think that a lot of us are kind of driven by that. We don't activate unless we're afraid, and we can't see this. We can't see like what's happening 100 years from now. We can't feel it if we're in a privileged space, like, you know, if we're living in a nice environment, we're not getting tornadoes and hurricanes and all the other stuff that kind of go up globally. And then you consider all the little micro areas, you know, like oil spills or, you know, I grew up in LA. I couldn't go out to play in the 70s because it got so hot. The smog was so bad, we couldn't go outside. Now LA is great. They made changes. So these are important things. I'm going to hand it back to you. I think we only have like 3.5, so maybe you do 2 and then I'll do 2 or something.
Oh, sure. I mean, so this year, I don't want to cite this source because I heard it like a year ago. I forget where I heard it. But I vaguely remember someone you know, talking about climate change and like pontificating over like what we can do or whatever. And I specifically remember them mentioning that we're already past the point of no return if that argument, if the man-made argument can be made, then there's, I mean, you'd have to like change like the whole world in order to go like negative on like carbon emissions or whatever. So my question is, I mean, yeah, if you could science the shit out of it, I mean, I would assume it would have to deal with like doing clean energy one and then like planting a whole bunch of trees or something like that too. That's my, you know, I'm not a climatologist or whatever, so I'm not gonna even pretend that I have like a specifically great answer with, but you know, like I can only assume that there is something we could do, but at this point, can we really do it? You know what I mean? Like, and at this point too, is it even really worth it? You know, yeah, you can say that, yeah, we need to protect ourselves and whatnot, but I'm still not sold on the idea that anything that's happening right now is out of the ordinary. You know, it would make a lot more sense if like people were just like dying of like heat stroke all over the place or something like that. And I've also seen a lot of data to suggest that we're actually at like, we might be at the start of like a cooling period or something like that. Maybe it's just a dip and then it'll go back up. I'm not sure, but you know, again, I'm not here to totally refute the idea that it's man-made, but I am here to say that, you know, there is no super definitive proof. And I'm not here to stop anybody else from solving the problem. You know, if somebody comes out tomorrow, which I mean, maybe they'd get blockaded because I really do think man-made climate change is something that the government is pushing for, you know, an elite class or whatever. But if somebody were to come out tomorrow with the most ridiculous invention, and I say ridiculous in a good way, and they could take all of our pollutants and turn it into energy or whatever, and they even make oxygen out of it. I don't even know. Hey, I'm not gonna stop you. Go for it. You know what I mean? Would that have negative ramifications on the ozone or on the climate? Oh, it might. I mean, you know, like that's just how these things work. You know what I mean? Like you can't just take one out and then put another in and then just assume it's gonna be good. Like, you know, at some point it has to eat up. So yeah. So, but anyways, I'll pass it back.
Thanks. Well, what I hear from you just saying is there's a lot of uncertainty. You don't know what the right choices are. You don't know how drastic it is. We really can't tell. The more the people that are like intimately familiar with the details of how to read that stuff, the people that they went, you know, they've been doing this a long time. I trust them with their ability to reason. I understand you're questioning the government, and I want to bring up the psychological side of this because I think it's an important element of the question, which is why people ignore it or don't believe it or just can't understand it. Is one of the things that we have in the media, which I'm sure bothers you, the mainstream media or Breitbart or whatever fucking bullshit site. Sorry if I guess cussing's okay on this. There's the idea of normalizing everything and making it like every opinion is equal. So, for instance, when it's like anything that gets politically polarized, I have some notes. I'm just going to read it on there. There's this gap between scientists and public opinion. So we saw this with smoking and the tobacco industry, right? The data revealed a huge and growing gulf between what scientists and the public think about everything, about vaccines and animal research and all this stuff, right? And the insistence of the media on balancing like the coverage of climate change, it's like you can't say anything about a skeptic coming on and who has no experience. So for instance, you'll have it's like some corporate funded think tank will have some guy who handles cigarettes, for instance, and that kind of goes back before the chlorofluorocarbon thing, where you have people that said, oh, cigarettes are fine, they're not going to hurt you, and they were paid for. You got some scientist and you hired him, and he could find a way that cigarettes wouldn't cause cancer. Like he could always find it. You hire these people. So you got on both sides. You got corporations that are trying to save the buck. They're thinking more about the moment and how they're going to get what they're going to get. Consumers are thinking the same way. They're smoking. They're not thinking about their future. So there's a lot of us doing that, and it helps for us to take a break and look at the wise people that should know. And learn to be skeptical and read what they have to say so that we aren't ignorant of what the future might hold. So we know what we really need to do. I mean, there's a certain point where, the Dakota tribe and the people at the pipeline went there knowing that this was really important to them, and it turned into this huge catalyst for like all these people. And now there's like 2,000 veterans blocking this pipeline, which seems like immediately very gratifying. A lot of businesses are going to be able to get gas to people. People are going to be able to drive. I mean, this is a public need. It's a public good that's being controlled and become privatized. And so the idea of privatizing that and privatizing all Indian lands and taking all their oil and taking it from all the other countries until there's nothing left isn't a pleasant direction to go regardless. So why not be cautious? Why not take a moment and try to be reasonable? That's my thinking.
So it's your turn to speak. Oh, right. So I'm actually pleasantly surprised about the psychological thing. Look, the point is that if it wasn't for the fact that the government lies to me about a lot of things, like WMDs in the Middle East, or that the Affordable Care Act won't raise premiums. I mean, these are things just, in the past less than 2 decades. I mean, and then you have the fervent political atmosphere that surrounds climate change. You know what I'm saying? Like this isn't as simple as saying that like murder is wrong. It's a little bit more complex because the truth is that you need compelling evidence. You know what I mean? You need to. I mean, I'm not gonna. If you show me, if you somehow you could make a control group and you could show me this is our climate in the control group and this is our climate not as it is now, and there's a complete difference, and actually we never hit this spike period and whatnot, then I would be like, oh yeah, that's phenomenal. Wow, okay, so let's go ahead and do something. But unfortunately, you can't. And then on top of that, the trend. I'll let you talk about it when I pass the mic. But the overall trend over billions of years, you can't track it. There is no real trend. It just goes up and down.
Yeah, for a long time, just go up and down. You can see it. I don't know how well this works, and I'm sure there's a better way to send it across, but you can see it going up and down there. And then you can see those are like each number at the bottom at the baseline is like a 50,000 year unit. So it just kind of goes up and down every 50,000 or so years and wobbles. And then bam, it starts going up. And then like even 1950, it's just a spike. It's nuts, right? So, and this is taken from NASA. So these are.
Sorry, your time ended. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll go ahead and look into that. Oh, but again, I mean, just I'm not trying to denigrate the people at NASA, but you know, again, my whole government thing. So, but again, my main point is that I don't think there's enough compelling evidence. I do think that there's evidence though.